Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to week 3 in CU 122. Chef Suzanne and I welcome you all to another fine live session. As we just mentioned, this class rocks, everybody. The on-time submissions in this class has been absolutely fantastic, and we're awfully proud of everybody for doing that. And Chef Suzanne and I thank you for your effort to get your assignments in on time. It's a real show of professionalism, and that's what we look for when we're getting people into industry. So congratulations, everybody. I think week 2 turned out to be fantastic all the way around. Chef Suzanne just mentioned that she had some great assignments. I want to find out how much chicken salad she tried over the weekend, because something tells me she might have had a bite or two. She kind of goes that way when there's chicken on the menu. So that's awfully exciting to look forward to. Chef Suzanne.
I actually did not make chicken salad this weekend,
really?
but we did get chicken and we smoked a bunch of meat this weekend. So I actually have some smoked chicken that I'm hoping to turn into some chicken salad, some smoked chicken salad. So I was doing a little bit of forward thinking, but we had the smoker fired up and we just smoked all weekend. So,
right. Oh, that sounds delicious.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. But I do have some awesome things to share. Let me see. All right, is my screen on there?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. Well, so again, this week I've been reaching out to students to get some photos to use in a presentation. So there was some absolutely beautiful work this week. So here's Taylor made some awesome looking stuffed mushrooms. And Holly did her chicken salad 2 different ways, right? On bread, without bread, some beautiful looking mushrooms again.
Uh-huh.
And again, Jennifer, same thing. One with a bread and one without, so gluten-free, and one with some gluten, because that's a big thing nowadays. And Alicia also just knocked it out of the park with some presentation this week.
Nice.
I know, right? The stuff I get to look forward to and get to look at these photos each week.
Wow.
Right?
That's got Instagram written all over it.
I hope so. I hope that so many of these photos, and obviously I can't show everybody's, but I mean, this is just a tiny bit of what I got to see this week. And I'm still grading, so everyone I open, I get to see more of these amazing presentations. Here, another one with the double presentation with and without gluten.
Uh-huh.
And again, some more gorgeous mushrooms. This is another one, Instagram worthy, very much so.
Uh-huh, absolutely. Nice.
Right. And this one here, she also made some Parmesan crisps to go on the top, and I believe that's a balsamic glaze.
Nice.
On there also. And so saw some just really incredible creative presentations. Look at that chicken salad. I would flip if I saw that. Somebody eating that nearby. That's the kind of thing where I go, what is she having? I need that. So I'm that person. I'm easily swayed by what others are eating.
Wow. It's so rewarding as chef instructors for Chef Suzanne and I to see that level of quality assignment be turned in. So that's awesome. Isn't it, Chef Suzanne?
It is. And I feel like it also, being able to show some of these in a presentation like this kind of gives everybody an idea of what others are doing so you can all kind of inspire and push each other. So that's one of my favorite parts about this. And I love pictures of food. And so this is just right up my alley. I enjoy this very much.
Yeah, that was awesome. Congratulations, everybody, on your really nice work. That hands off, that is awesome. So thumbs up to everybody. Chef Suzanne and I had a really nice conversation this afternoon, and I'd like to touch on that just a little bit because we saw some of that here in the pictures. Chef Suzanne and I, our number one concern is that everybody learns the technique. That's what we teach during the class, and then the recipes are designed to display the techniques. And we just looked at the pictures a few moments ago, and a lot of students presented the actual technique in the form of the actual recipe. That's what we need to see. That's what needs to be done every week. However, a lot of students also presented an alternative dish with their particular take on it. For example, the chicken salad sandwich that we saw had red grapes in it and also had apples in it. That rocks it. I love seeing that. I love stretching it a little bit, but we need to make sure that each week we see the actual recipe as written so we understand that you have learned the technique. That is the most important thing. Did I cover that right, Chef Suzanne?
I think so. And I think, you know, we want there to be some, you know, creativity, but if you stray too far from the recipes, sometimes it can actually backfire. And so then you're actually struggling. And so what we need to see as far as the technique isn't there because you may have changed it too much. So, and I love seeing where students do, and I know I saw it more than once. I don't know that I had any photos of it, where students made like 2 batches of chicken salad and did like you said, one that way and then one maybe grandma's way with eggs and you know, paprika and all that kind of stuff. So still doing it, you know, the recipe way for the technique, but then kind of branching out and doing what they're familiar with. Or mushrooms. I saw a lot of double mushrooms this week, following the recipe for, you know, some. And then for the others, I saw a lot of crab stuffed mushrooms. So I'm guessing crab was on sale this week. So I saw a lot of crab stuffed mushrooms. And that's great. So we're able to see, to make sure that you've got the technique right and you're able to have a little bit of freedoms, you know, to do your own things. You can always do more. Just make sure you're really following closely to the techniques. I also saw some where maybe somebody didn't have any celery or any onions, or they don't like celery or onions. Well, if you omitted the celery and onions out of your chicken salad and didn't replace it with something else, all of a sudden you have all this extra mayo, and now your chicken salad isn't quite right. So, you know, think about those things when you are making any changes to a recipe, that it can affect the taste, the texture, the cook time. So you have to be really careful with those adjustments in a recipe. And here, it's not just the recipe, it's part of your grade. So you have to be really careful with changes.
Absolutely. Well spoken. So just make sure that when you're submitting your weekly assignment that you are in accordance with that rubric, so we know that you have learned the technique. Don't stop submitting a lot of those funk dishes that we just saw, because those are fantastic, and that's how you grow as a culinarian. But when you make a batch of the weekly recipe, take a portion of the batch, submit that as it is required on the rubric, and then take the remainder of the batch and funk it up as much as you want, add your touch to it, and submit that as well, because we really enjoy seeing that. And I think that's a great vehicle for growth. Chef Suzanne also brought up another fantastic point that I think we need to address that'll really help everybody in their careers. Imagine if you were to put together a special and you were good to go out to a guest table, and the guest said, "How is the special tonight?" And you were to reply by saying, "I don't know, I didn't taste it because I don't like mushrooms." Oh, well, you always have to allow yourself to taste the food. There are times in industry when you're not going to care for what you tasted for, and that's okay not to care for it. There's no problem. But don't deprive yourself of the opportunity to enjoy the flavors and explore new foods in different fashions than what you are used to. So Chef Suzanne and I urge you to always taste everything. It's a critical element. The worst thing you can do in a restaurant is to prepare a dish and not taste it. That is a kiss of death, because you never know what's walking out your kitchen door, and that's not a good thing. Is that correct, Chef Suzanne?
I agree.
I love it.
Yeah, wholeheartedly. And not only that, I've even had job interviews where I had to cook food, and I can't imagine if I had to, I'm not a big fan of calamari, but I can't imagine if somebody had asked me to cook calamari, if I'd have just served it to them to try and, you know, get this job opportunity without ever tasting it first, because I don't really like it. So you should always try everything that you make.
Absolutely. It's called roulette, and you don't want to play roulette with your food. Narrow down the odds by tasting the dish. It's highly recommended. In kitchens, commercial kitchens, all over the kitchen, you'll see small buckets, or you should see the small buckets that are labeled tasting spoons. And we have tasting spoons all throughout the kitchen, so as we're preparing things, we taste it, whether we like it or not, but we have to make sure the flavor is right on the line. So, ladies and gents, that's some good advice from some chefs that have been around for a little while just to help you out. Let's take a look at what we've got going on the screen back here. Don't forget, everybody, to keep your attendance going. This class has been doing pretty good on that, but please post attendance at least every 4 days. If you follow the weekly prep sheet that we'll get to here in just a moment, that will help you post attendance every 4 days. We do that because we want to keep you close to the program. The students that maintain regular attendance in the program succeed 100% of the time. So that's what our goal is, and that's what we want to see for all of you. This class rocks, like we just mentioned. And then, hey, I noticed a couple of people did not complete the knowledge check, both knowledge checks this week. So make sure that you take the time to get them both done, because those points do add up towards the end of the course. So make sure you get them done. Don't forget that you can take the knowledge checks as many times as you like, and only the highest score will stick. Anybody have any questions? Alvina?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
I'm in class on my phone right now. For some reason, I can't log in on my computer. It's telling me that I can't get into the meeting on my computer.
Huh. That's very unusual. Can you send me a message after the class, and let's try to address that? See how we can help you out and fix it?
Okay, because she's saying error. And Stacy says she can't get in it either.
Okay. So we might, sounds like we might have a little bit of a challenge there with the link, so we'll get that taken care of for you.
Okay, so Sarah said the same thing. It's popping up now. Yeah.
Okay. Shoot me a message and we'll resolve it for you, Alvina.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Uh-huh.
All right, ladies and gents. Moving on to week 3 in CU 122. Let's take a look at our weekly class page here to see what we got going on in CU 122. Research materials this week. There's some great videos in there. We're not going to watch them during tonight's class, but I highly urge all of you to take advantage of it. They're going to explain the sausage making process step by step, as well as the pickled vegetable step by step. So you really need to tune in. Don't forget to take both knowledge checks this week. The first knowledge check is based upon your research materials. Second knowledge check is based upon conversions in the kitchen. I know it's getting old, but hang in there, folks. You all need to know it. You will use it on a daily basis. And don't forget, you can take those knowledge checks as many times as you like, and only the highest score will stick. And then in the kitchen this week, we're working on pickled vegetables and sausage. So we're going to get to that here in just a few minutes. And then, ladies and gents, our weekly prep list. Don't forget, this presentation is posted on your class page. It's already there. It's down at the very bottom underneath the last recipe. Wednesday, attend or watch the live session. On Thursday, sit down, grab a cup of coffee, read your research materials, understand them, learn them, know them, and then complete both knowledge checks. And then on Friday, take a few minutes, read the assignment before you even start. And then create yourself a prep list, and then a timeline, and then purchase your mise en place. Call your chef instructor. Call me if you have any questions regarding your assignment. Hey, I don't understand this part of the sausage making. We're going to walk you through. We're going to help you out. And then on Saturday and Sunday, complete your knowledge, complete your assignment, and submit. Make sure you check it against the rubric. Then make any changes as suggested by Chef Suzanne on Monday and Tuesday. Any questions about that, ladies and gents? All right, everybody. Conversions knowledge check. Like I mentioned a few moments ago, this is in the weekly presentation, and this is something that you will be using on a religious basis once you're in the kitchen. Trust me, and this is one of those little things that puts you ahead of the game once you go into industry. So make sure that you take the time to learn those. All right, everybody, each week we like to show you some new equipment that you'll be working with in the kitchen as it applies to the assignment. This week, here we go. couple of different things. A lot of times we get questions about, can I use a glass bowl or can I use a stainless steel bowl for the assignment? 99.9% of the time we only use stainless steel bowls in the kitchen. The reason for that is they don't break and they can be cleaned and sanitized. There's a little label on foods. They come on sinks and equipment, and a lot of equipment that you purchase, it's called NSF. NSF means, it stands for National Sanitation Foundation, and that means that piece of equipment has been certified cleanable and sanitary. So that's the label you want to look for on your equipment when you purchase it for the kitchen. NSF, it's a small blue label. Very, very important. Sausage grinders or meat grinders come in various forms, shapes, and sizes. A lot of these will attach directly to your actual mixer, and you can grind your meats, cheeses, or whatever else on your actual stand mixer. So pretty kind of neat. This is a traditional sausage stuffer down here. You see the tubes that will help fill link sausage that is used with casing. And then hotel pans. I know we've looked at these already, but hotel pans are critical because they pretty much set the standard size in the kitchen. All pans in the kitchen are based off of that. So you have a full pan, which is called a 200 pan or a 2-inch pan. That goes down to half, third, sixth, and ninth. And then a speed rack, very common piece of equipment. You'll see hundreds of these over your career in the world of culinary arts. We put sheet pans on these, and that's what we store all of our product. And they're awfully handy because you get to move them all over the kitchen. Makes life easy. All right, anybody have any questions so far? Ladies and gents, moving on to a very exciting subject. I know Chef Suzanne likes this subject, and I do too. I really get into this. There's something we need to talk about here when it comes to sausage making, and that is called charcuterie. Charcuterie is the term that defines sausage making, pâtés, pepperonis, salamis, all force meats, all this kind of good stuff kind of goes under the term charcuterie. And charcuterie is a term that refers to a period of time. And that period of time was back in the medieval days when the kings and the queens would get the very fine cuts of the meats. So when they would butcher the animal, the tenderloin and the ribeye would go to the kings and the queens. And then the poor people or the peasants would end up with cuts of meat that were unpalatable. That was one issue that they had. And then the other issue that they had was they didn't have much refrigeration around during that time. And so they had to figure out a way to preserve the product, to keep it fresh or edible for when they needed it. And hence they created things like salamis, pâtés, bolognas, all that type of good stuff, which are all forms of charcuterie, which actually preserve the product. So taking a look at our page, charcuterie is devoted to the preparation of meat products such as bacon, ham, terrines, galantines, pâté, confit, which is one of my most favorite dishes. That's where you actually cook a protein in its own animal fat at a very slow period, and it makes it extremely tender. Charcuterie is generally prepared in the garmage section of the kitchen. It comes from the cold side, and it's intended to preserve the meat, like I mentioned. They did not have refrigeration back then, so they needed to find a way to keep it going. So that is the story of charcuterie many, many years ago. And it is still alive. So the kings and the queens from medieval times gave us the salamis, the serranos, the prosciuttos, and many other fine forms of preserved meats. Any questions about charcuterie? We're good? All right, ladies and gents, this week in the kitchen we are making sausage. Sausage begins with what we call force meat. Force meat is a ground product from a primal cut. A primal cut can be a top round, a shoulder, a rib. the main cut, and then we'll break that down and we'll grind it. So traditionally, force meat is a mixture of ground lean meat mixed with fat. And then it can either be smooth or coarse depending on the actual preparation. Smooth, for example, would go into pâtés. Rough, for example, would go into sausage. So force meat, a hamburger is made from force meat. So it's basically a term that we use in the kitchen to refer to ground meat. Now, when it comes to sausage making, you want to make sure that you have a meat that is high in fat. And that fat not only preserves the moisture, but it helps spread the flavor throughout the sausage evenly and helps the flavor stick to the palate, which enhances the flavor in return. So meat products generally are sold, ground meat or force meats are generally sold by what we call the grind. Okay? So traditionally in the grocery store, when you go to buy ground meat, you'll see 80 or 20 on the label, or you'll see 70-30, 90-10. The first number refers to the percentage of solid muscle, right? So if it's 90-10, it's 90% solid muscle, and then the 10 refers to the amount of fat. So 90% muscle, 10% fat. So that would be an extremely lean meat. That would be good for meatloaf or for something else like that. However, when it comes to sausage making, you want the higher fat content. So you want to be looking for a fat content right around 75-25. So 75% solid muscle and then 25% fat. This way you get that nice moist product that's very flavorful. If the product is dry and the fat content is not high enough, the flavors will not disperse through the force meat evenly, and you will not get that nice, well-rounded flavor that you are looking for. Does anybody have any questions regarding force meat? Chef Suzanne, you ever get into force meat? Not horse meat, force meat.
No, not horse meat. I do love, I think that terrines and ballantines and galantines and things are just the coolest thing in the world to make. And that was my favorite thing to teach when I was in a ground school, is I loved to do those. There's so many different ways to get creative, and so many places don't do them, that when you can offer pâtés and terrines and these amazing force meats, that it really just wows people and impresses them to no end, because it's so different, because so many places don't do it. That I love. I'm every once in a while, and I'm gonna do it. I said it last block that I was gonna make a terrine, and I didn't. This time I'm gonna make probably duck.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. We spoke last week quite a bit about hors d'oeuvres in the kitchen, and we ended up making the stuffed mushrooms as a result. Pâtés, galantines, and ballantines, which are all listed underneath your research materials this week, are prime examples of hors d'oeuvres to be served. And plus things like galantines and ballantines, where we take the chicken leg and the thigh, we remove the tendons, we'll flatten them out, and then we'll fill them with a portion of pâté or another type of force meat, and then create a ball effect out of it, and then roast that or poach that, and then slice it and serve it as a hors d'oeuvre is absolutely fantastic. We're going to look at some traditional forms of charcuterie out there, or traditional forms of sausages, I'm sorry. We have bratwurst, chorizo, which is big in Latin American countries, about 186 different varieties. You'll see it called chorizo or chorizo, depending on where you're at. It'll come in a link form. It'll come in a hard form. So there's multiple different forms. Just because it's called chorizo, don't assume that it's that inexpensive stuff you buy in the grocery store for chorizo and eggs. Traditional summer sausage that's very big in the Midwestern United States. It's much more solid. The meat is ground much finer and is traditionally a smoked product. Salami, which comes in a lot of different forms. It has the whole fat in there. Salami is traditionally cured and cooked with pink salt or TCM, which has nitrates added to it, about 6% nitrates, which help preserve the product and prevent botulism and listerosis from taking the product over. A lot of different raw sausages that we buy in the grocery store. from the Italian sausage family quite a bit. Knackwurst, andouille sausage, which you see quite a bit used in French cuisine or Louisiana, is very, very popular. And then boudin, which is a blood sausage, very, very popular, where they get the blood from the animal to coagulate. And then fouette, which is another classic example of sausage. So big business out there. So there's a lot of different directions that you can go into with sausage making. Let's talk a little bit about the casings, which are very, very important. A lot of people are kind of foggy about the whole casing situation. Today, unfortunately, they do use a lot of synthetic casings. However, traditionally, we use animal intestines as the casing for our sausages. Taking a look at the slide. It's known as sausage skin, or traditionally in the restaurant industry, we just refer to it as casing. A little bit of the higher end restaurants will use the actual animal casing from, it depends on what sausage you're making. If you're making a smaller sausage, a breakfast sausage, an Italian sausage, or a chorizo link, you're going to use intestines from a goat or a sheep or a lamb, a smaller animal. But once you get into some of the larger animals, some of the pork products, you can make some larger sausages. Natural casings are made from animal intestines. Artificial casings were first introduced in the 20th century, and are made of cellulose. I don't like them because I don't like I don't like eating things that weren't designed to be eaten. So that's kind of hard to explain. So this is what the actual intestines look like when you purchase them. You open up your container. They generally come fresh or frozen, and you need to wash them out very well before using them. Does anyone have any questions so far? Chef Suzanne, we have a quiet class tonight. You know that?
We do have a quiet class tonight. There's a little bit of chat going on, but not too much.
We need to require everybody to drink a little espresso before class.
That sounds like an awful idea.
All right, ladies and gents, let's take a look at our recipe this week for breakfast sausage and see what we got going on in the kitchen here. We talked just a moment ago about the 75-25, so I highly recommend that you look for that in your grocer's shelf. It's readily available. Traditionally, ground pork has a very high fat content, so just look on the label. It should say 75-25. We do not recommend substituting turkey or chicken for this recipe. However, if you don't eat pork, we understand. So chicken or turkey would be an acceptable thing to use. However, definitely try to stick with the pork. The turkey and chicken will be a little bit more on the dry side, even though it says it's higher in fat. It's a different type of unnatural fat that they add to it, so it's not good. Rubbed sage. If you look at the name sausage, right? S-A-U, sow, right? Pig. Sage, S-A-G-E. So it's pig and sage is the traditional meaning behind the word. So rubbed sage will go into there. Kosher salt, preferably. Try not to use table salt. We don't like iodine in our foods. And then ground black pepper, marjoram. If you don't have marjoram at home, you could substitute a small amount of oregano. Brown sugar, which is simply a mixture of molasses and white sugar. Ground clove, nutmeg, cayenne pepper. And then the ice water is very, very important because when you're working with sausage, you don't want the fat to get too hot and disperse. You don't want the fat to break down before the cooking process. So make sure that you do have the ice water on hand. So in a bowl, you're going to combine all of your seasonings. And then in the other separate bowl, you're going to have your ground pork, and make sure that the bowls that you're working with are cold. Put them into your freezer. Let them cool down for a little while. It's not only a food safety thing, but it's also helps the fat stay intact. And then you're going to add the spices to the pork and mix very, very well. Slowly add the ice water and continue until the sausage is sticky. Just like a sticky dough where you can touch it and it sticks and pulls, you want the sausage to have that same effect. And then you're going to take a small piece to cook this off. Make sure you do this. It's very, very important. Always taste what you're making. So after you mix your sausage and the seasonings together, you're going to cook off a small amount, and then you're going to taste it to make sure that you've got everything right where you want it. And then you're going to shape them into 1 ounce disc patties. And then you're going to take a small sheet pan, put some parchment paper onto it, and then you're going to put your patties down on top of the parchment paper. You're going to label it with what it is, the date, the expiration date, 7 days from today. Wrap it thoroughly in plastic and then put it in the freezer. This week we are not cooking the sausage. We don't do that till next week, so it's very, very important. Does anybody?
We have a question in the box, actually a couple in the box that I think may be good for those out in archive land that aren't here. That if they can't find the right kind of sausage, so the 75-25, about adding additional fat. And I said that a lot of cases you can go to a butcher and they will just sell you some pork fat back, just the fat, and sometimes you can even get it for free because they may just throw it away. So putting in liquid fat, olive oil, that sort of thing won't work. It needs to be a cold, solid fat. So that's why, like I said, find a butcher and be super nice and tell them what you're doing, that you make your own sausage, and they will normally sell you some of the scraps from like a pork butt or some of the fat back pretty cheap, and sometimes for free. You have to smile a lot though, so.
Yep, generally they will, especially if they know you're a student and you're studying in school. They're going to help you out. So 99% of the time, and I don't imagine that you'll need it too much. The recipe calls for 1 pound of ground pork at 75-25, which means that for the total recipe, you only need 4 ounces of fat. And if you do buy the ground pork, 90% of the time it's going to be 75-25. But if it's 80-20, then you need to add maybe 1 ounce of pork fat to it, or animal fat. Chef Suzanne touched on a very important point right there. Solid fat is what you need to be working with. Do not add vegetable oil or olive oil. It's not going to work. It's just going to get hot and drip right out of the sausage. You need to have what we call a hydrogenated animal fat. Hydrogenated oils are oils that have links of hydrogen in there, which force them to solidify when they get cool. So make sure you follow that recommendation. The fat that you're working with this week, if you do have to get a little extra fat from your butcher, make sure that it's cold when you go to mince it up and put it into your fat. Anybody else have any questions regarding that? Nope. All right, ladies and gents, under your research materials, you're going to find this video right here. And this video will walk you through the entire process. And it just basically recaps everything that we just spoke about. It is in your research materials, and it's also in this weekly presentation, which has been posted onto the class page already. So any other questions about sausage before we move on to our next topic? All right, ladies and gents, let's talk pickling here. And I know Chef Suzanne is down there in Texarkana where they do lots of pickling and stuff, don't they?
I do, actually. There's a lot of pickled stuff. There's eggs and pig feet and okra and plus cucumbers, squash, green beans. You can pickle all sorts of stuff. It's good stuff. Yeah,
delicious. And pickling, we just talked about meat preservation in the form of charcuterie back in the medieval days. Pickling also stems from a method of preservation because when they harvested the vegetables, they needed to have a way to be able to eat them during the winter months. And so pickling was born and launched. So pickling is a very, very important part of our diet. It's a process or preserving the lifespan of food and anaerobic fermentation in the brine or immersion in the vinegar. So anaerobic fermentation would refer to things like kimchi. There are certain forms of sauerkraut that have the anaerobic fermentation that takes place as well in the brine, or the immersion in vinegar, which we're going to be working with this week, that preserves the product. And then it really adds and enhances the flavor of the product. You see pickling used in a multitude of different applications. Down here in Mexico, for example, tacos are frequently served with pickled red onions that really enhance the flavor of fatty food. So the pickling process with that high acidic level cuts through the flavors of fat right away. So it's something that we use in modern cuisine in a lot of different ways. And the most important thing to remember is that the pickling is traditionally a form of preserving the foods. So pig's feet, for example, which I know are big in the South, they're done because once they butcher the pig, they had no method of keeping them fresh. So they simply pickled the items, which gave them the opportunity to eat them year round. So taking a look at this week's recipe in the kitchen for pickling, you're working on cucumbers. This particular recipe calls for English seedless cucumbers. Those cucumbers are the long, thin cucumbers that are traditionally wrapped in plastic. They're cryovac in a sense. And those are highly recommended because they have little or no seeds in them, and they're much easier to work with. If you can't find those, I know Walmart, and Chef Suzanne could probably back me up on this, but Walmart sells pickling cucumbers that could be used as a substitute for this recipe. Don't they sell those in little bags, if I'm not mistaken?
They absolutely do. I like to buy those sometimes just to munch on them because you can eat the whole thing and they're not very big and you can just munch on cucumbers. So absolutely, you can buy those at the grocery store.
Yeah, so they are there, and I know they're in season, so there's plenty of them out there. So English cucumbers are the suggested source for this. If you don't have that, you can always work with the pickling cucumber. Try to avoid the use of traditional cucumbers because of the amount of seeds that are in there. You won't have the firmness and the texture that you're actually looking for. You're going to start with your English cucumber. You have your kosher salt. Water, which can just be room temperature. You don't have to worry about it being hot or cold. White wine vinegar. Last time we had vinegar used in a recipe, we had a lot of students asking about what kind. White wine vinegar, please stick with that. Try not to substitute any other kind of vinegar because you're really going to be affecting the flavor profile. Sugar, bay leaf, crushed red pepper, allspice, and fresh dill are the basics for that. And then you're going to slice your cucumber into disc, thin as possible, probably about a 1/16 of an inch, eighth of an inch. So that's real tiny slices right there, real thin. You're going to toss those with salt and let rest for a colander in an hour. What the salt does, this is the same way that you make sauerkraut, by the way. What the salt does is it breaks down the vegetable fibers and it allows the moisture to excrete. So you're basically taking a lot of the water out of the cucumber. So make sure it's in a colander and make sure you have something underneath that colander because there's a lot of moisture that's going to be dripping out of there. We don't want you to be flooding your kitchen floors. So while that's happening, bring to a boil the water, vinegar, sugar, bay leaf, allspice, crushed red pepper. After that comes to a boil, everything's dissolved, the flavors have incorporated. You're going to remove it from the heat, just let it come down for a little while, and then you're going to throw the dill in there. Try not to substitute with any other herbs. Dill is widely available at most stores. Any other herbs, if you go with sage or if you go with marjoram, oregano, basil, whatever, it's just not going to work. You're going to get a really different flavor profile. After those cucumbers have sat for an hour, you're going to start rinsing those, all that excess sodium off the surface, all the salt. And then you're going to take a paper towel. I like to lay the paper towels out flat, lay the cucumber slices down, and then kind of roll it up and just squeeze gently, which will remove all the additional moisture and sodium. And then you're going to place those in a bowl, and you're going to cover with the pickling liquid. And then you're going to make sure that those pickle slices are submerged. And you're going to let them sit. And after a couple of hours, you can start eating them once those flavors are incorporated. They're good to go. But now it's in a preserved state, so they will stick around for a little while. Ladies and gents, any questions on pickled cucumbers? No?
I do have just some tidbits and little information. I know that a lot of folks, I know I did, grew up with family that did a lot of pickling. This is a little different. This isn't your really long-term fermented pickling where, you know, when my grandma would make pickles, we couldn't eat them for a week or even more. These are pretty much ready as soon as you're done. These don't have to sit in, matter of fact, they shouldn't sit for, you know, days or weeks. This is quick pickling. So technically you can make them and they're pretty much usable right away, which is why you need to try and slice your cucumbers really thin to start with. And another reason why the traditional regular cucumbers aren't the best option, because the skin on those is so thick that it doesn't really, the brine doesn't really break down and affect it as much as it should. So this is a little different from pickling that you may have done, or like the canning type pickling. This is quick pickling, which is even better because boom, you can have pickles. And FYI, this recipe is really good. I will be making these this week because I loved them the last time.
This ain't your grandmother's pickling, right? So this is something that we would do in the restaurant industry to produce a fairly quick product that will be ready to go right away. The shelf life on these is not eternal, like you would find in a traditional pickling process, like a giardiniera mix or a pickle. So you don't want to keep them around too long. Ladies and gents, in the class page underneath the research materials, you will find this video that's going to show you everything you need to know about pickling cucumbers. So it is in the weekly presentation, and it's also under the research materials. Taking a look at our week 2 class page, or not our class page, but our actual assignment this week. Chef Suzanne, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Just, how are the uniforms been looking lately?
Oh, very, very nice. I was kind of hoping we'd see more uniforms this week, but in general, looking very good. So.
Fantastic. That's awesome news. How's sanitation going?
Couple issues. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I actually have a note. Make sure that you are not putting your ready-to-eat foods anywhere near raw products. So this week is a really, really good example of that, because I know a lot of you went above and beyond this week and cooked your own chicken, as you should have, for that amazing chicken salad. And so I saw some pictures where folks had all their mise en place, and they had all their lettuce and their, you know, all their mayo and everything ready to go. And then right next to it is a big pile of raw chicken. And that's a huge no-no, because that chicken now, you know, for the mise en place photo, if that chicken was already cooked, then it would be fine. But that raw chicken next to that seasoning and that mayo, none of that is going to be cooked anymore, sitting right next to that raw chicken. So be really careful of ready-to-eat foods next to any raw uncooked product, or in particular meats. So just think like a health inspector. Yep.
Cross-contamination is a big issue in the world of culinary arts. And you got to remember what Chef Suzanne is talking about. You know, she's talking about your one assignment. But when you're in industry, that raw chicken sitting next to that chicken salad, you're talking about feeding 400 or 500 people. And so you can get quite a few individuals sick. So Chef Suzanne makes a very valid point that we should really get in the habit of doing that now, not when we potentially jeopardize the health of somebody else. We're going to look at our assignment this week. We need, trying to flip my screen around over here. For the sausage, both assignments, we need to make sure that we're in proper uniform, looking good, nice, and professional. And then we also need to have our proper sanitation set up, good and ready to go. Mise en place for both assignments. Close up with sliced cucumbers for the pickling assignment. Sliced cucumbers with salt and the coriander. When we see that picture, we'll see lots of moisture coming to the surface, and that's what we're looking for to make sure that that's happening. And then your pickling liquid in the pot brought to a boil, and then rinsed cucumbers, and then cucumbers in a non-reactive bowl and cover with pickling liquid. Non-reactive bowl, you don't want to put that into a copper pot. That's not good, because you'll be removing a lot of the surface and putting that into your food. So be very, very careful about that. So that takes care of the pickling, pickled cucumber recipe. Breakfast sausage, remember, don't cook them this week. Just take a small amount, cook it, and taste it, make sure it's up to standard, and then you're going to freeze the remainder of them. But ground pork in a bowl on ice. And so you'll have a larger bowl, right, and ice underneath it, and then the bowl on the top, because that pork has to be cold throughout the entire process. Spices mixed together, pork and spices mixed together, pork spices mixed together with the addition of ice water formed, and then the shaping of your pork patties. They should be about 1.5 to 2 inches in diameter, about a 1/4 inch thick, and then patties on the sheet pan, and then patties layered between parchment paper. This assignment says you can put them into Ziplocs, which is perfectly fine. I prefer to freeze them first, then take them out and put them into the Ziploc bags, because that helps the shape a little bit better of the product. And then you will put the name of the product, today's date, 7 days from today, or 7 days from the day that you prepare it. That is the expiration date and your initials on the label. Any questions, ladies and gents? Chef Suzanne?
I think we are good. I do have a couple of notes on another page, but I think for the most part, I think everything looks good. One thing that I didn't think about it till you were just talking about it. The recipe, some folks read it a little funny. When you're adding the ice water, you're just adding the ice water. So there should be a bowl of ice underneath your pork. So it should be like a bowl of ice with another bowl on top with your pork in it. Then you're going to add ice water in the top. So the ice underneath is just keeping that pork as cold as we can possibly keep it for safety. But then you also have a little bit of ice water off the side, is like 1 ounce or something, that you're going to add in just that really cold water, no chunks of ice, because that'll take forever for you to have to squish up ice cubes and get it all mixed in there. So you just want that cold water.
Yep. Ice water, not water and ice, just ice water. Great point. I'm glad that you said that. Absolutely fantastic. Ladies and gents, any other questions? All right, ladies and gents, we had a good live session tonight. Pretty quick. I didn't get rained out tonight, which I'm very, very excited about. So thank you for your patience. Don't forget to maintain that attendance at least every 4 days. If you follow the prep sheet, you'll get your attendance in, no problem. Fantastic job on week 2. You guys are really impressing Chef Suzanne and I, and we're awfully proud of the work that we see. Excellent work with getting your assignments in on time as well. That's wonderful. Everybody try to shoot for Sunday. It just makes life easier. You get your assignment back a lot quicker that way, and you can make any necessary changes. Once again, when you sit down to look at your assignment this Friday, if you have any questions, that's a great time to get a hold of us, because we're both in the office and we're more so than glad to help you out. Tuesday night at 11 o'clock, it's kind of hard to get a hold of us, so don't forget to give us a call then. Ladies and gents, I hope you all have a fantastic day. I'll see you next week from Tucson, Arizona. So take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody. Bye.